Good evening, everyone. It is July 17th, 2023. This is the regular board meeting of the Lake Bluff Park District Board of Commissioners. We're here in Lake County, Illinois.
I was just going to say if you're going to suggest an amendment for
Yes,
okay, the Commissioner Walton can do that.
That's true. Is she walking through the door? Or? Then I'm going to take a quick pause, even though we are recording. And now proceeding on from there, again, this is the regular board meeting of July 17th, 2023 of the Park District Board of Commissioners. May I ask, please, for a roll call?
Commissioner Greenfield.
Here.
Commissioner Lane. Here. Commissioner Raymore. Here. Commissioner Reeder. Here. Commissioner Walsh. Here. Commissioner Weber.
Here.
President Bueller.
Here. Next up on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Right.
Commissioner Greenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Lane.
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore. Yes. Commissioner Reeder.
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh. Yes. Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
President Bueller.
Yes. Let me defer for just a moment to our counsels, Puma, with the addition of the executive session if needed. Does that need to be a particular area of our agenda?
Just do it last as you typically would.
Okay. Thank you. Next up, we have our statement of visitors. This gives everyone who is in attendance here personally tonight, as well as anybody who's on Zoom, the opportunity to address the board on any topic that is Park District related. You have up to 3 minutes of time and a couple of ground rules, I guess, if I could call them that. We as a board listen. We don't engage with you. So if you'd like to speak to us, we will listen to you. We do time you for 3 minutes and we'll let you know when your time is up. We do take notes when you speak to us as well. But what I would like to tell you as well tonight is that we have the statement of visitors now, but we will offer an opportunity for everybody to speak after we address our agenda item, which deals with the pickleball courts. So if you'd like to the agenda. But I want to make sure that there are a number of people in attendance tonight. I believe there are a number of people as well attending by Zoom, and to make sure that everybody does have the opportunity to be heard. Again, going back to kind of the ground rules that we've established before, and as part of our policy manual, we don't disparage anybody by name. We keep things on a very cordial level, so as you are speaking, we would like you to be kind, I guess is the best way to say it. Okay? So starting with that then, if there's anyone who would like to make a statement at this time, you're more than welcome to. If you'd like to. On any matter before the Park District. No? You're awake? As a collective thing? Then I'll go over to Zoom. Is there anyone who would like to make a statement at this time to the board?
Yes, there are two. First, I'm going to say Rich. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, this is Rich Martin. Thank you for taking the opportunity to speak for letting me speak this evening. I'm going to speak about the pickleball issue. I would like to preface my comments tonight by highlighting the fact that our entire family are avid pickleball players. Our son was first introduced to the game back in middle school in gym class, and the rest of us started playing when my in-laws asked us to play while we were visiting about 10 years ago in Florida. They're currently in their 80s and still enjoy playing. It is a fun sport that virtually any age group can learn to play and enjoy together. It's no wonder that its popularity has exploded in the last few years. That being said, it is more than unfortunate that the park board did not complete proper due diligence when it was decided to install the pickleball courts on the remaining 2 Blair tennis courts a couple of years ago. I realize a couple of you on the board now were not members when this $80,000 decision was made, but several of you were. It's important for the community to know that our current board president and executive director were aware of the noise problem for over a year and did essentially nothing until the last month or so. Fortunately for our neighbors along Green Bay Road and Washington Avenue, the village has stepped in to force a resolution pointing out the illegal action made by the park board. I'm not happy that the courts are now not open, but it's important to direct our concerns to park board leadership and not disparage our neighbors that are adversely affected by the pickleball court's presence. If the park board had followed the law and process everyone else in Lake Bluff needs to follow, we would have beautiful courts somewhere in Lake Bluff where it does not affect our residents so detrimentally and illegally. Other venues like Artesian Park courts should be considered as a temporary solution, and the old skate park behind the rec center could be a permanent solution for a new pickleball facility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Jeff, you said there's another person who would like to speak?
No, not at this time. That was the only one.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda, we do have the consent agenda for this evening. The consent agenda consists of 4 items. One would be the approval of the minutes from June 26, 2023 for our regular board meeting. The next is approval of minutes from the July 10th, 2023 special committee of the whole meeting. Approving the invoice schedule for the ACH payables for the period of June 15th, 2023 through July 13th, 2023, and ratification of the purchase cards.
Jennifer, I need to make a change in the minutes.
I do too.
Yeah. Page 15.
Okay, I'm sorry, page 15 on the agenda.
The last paragraph. Commissioner Lane pointed out a few years ago, the district was awarded a grant, but the funding never came through because it says the pandemic interrupted the process. No, it was the state of Illinois put the grant on hold.
Say it again, please.
So it wasn't the pandemic, it's the state of Illinois put the grant on hold.
I just have a correction on page 18 of the June 26 minutes.
Yes.
In the second paragraph, in the second line, it says President Bueller explained that the courts were recently redone at Artesian Park. That should say Blair Park. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Unless you were referring to them being redone in 2016 when they were resurfaced.
In looking at the rest of the sentence with the Friends Foundation, they were the ones that did it on Blair Park, so I stand against correction.
So, I believe there's an omission. We need to add in that Commissioner Raymore also visited the Gamler's house, and at the time when I was there and recorded that sound, I had said there was 75 definitions.
Hold on, slow down just a minute. Sorry, where exactly are you looking?
Oh, I'm sorry, top of page 22.
Okay.
Did I get that?
Top of page 22 is new business?
Okay, top of page 23. It started on page 22, but at the top of 23, it says Commissioner Raymore visited pickleball courts I also visited the Gamrat's house, and I recorded an average of 75 decibels when I was there on the evening of June 30th.
I'm sorry, is it 75 decibels?
Yes, that's the thing,
And recorded on the date?
June 30th.
Anything else? Anything else from any of the commissioners on the minutes of June 26th or July 10th? Any questions on the ACH payables? Or purchase card recognition? Okay. With those amendments to the minutes, could I have a motion, please? To approve consent agenda items A through D.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Greenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Lane.
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore.
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weaver.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes. Thank you. Next up, we have the finance report in summary.
For Commissioner, President Bueller, Vice President Walsh, Treasurer Weber, Will Cunningham, Superintendent of Business Services. I'm happy to report that we are out of the lean months where revenues are exceeding expenses, thanks to the property tax disbursements. Year-to-date revenues are above estimated, or above budget by $128,000. And year-to-date expenses are below budget by about $900,000, but that will change as the capital projects come into play. And we reach the end of the summer and expenses will go up a little bit, including some of the remaining personnel expenses related to July and the first half of August. I move that you accept the financial reports as presented, unless there's questions.
Are there any questions from the commissioners on the finances as reported by Will?
Well, I just wanted a quick point of clarification. This is through May, correct?
June.
June, sorry. And the property taxes will hit in
June. So compared to last year, as of June 30th, we collected 42% of the property taxes. As of June 30th this year, we collected about 37% of property taxes.
Okay.
I don't know exactly why, other than just Lake County dispersed 37% instead of 42. And so that's why the June revenues were under or trailed the June budget by about $186,000. That sort of end of June payment, which would bring us to approximately 42 or 43%, came in the first week of July.
now any type of I guess like makeup payment, will we receive that kind of rolling up to the second installment in September, or we're not quite sure how the county distributes it?
So what was the first for me was the larger distribution in June was split into two because the county's bank couldn't make one payment.
Okay.
So yes, so we will continue to receive property taxes really up until about February of next year for this year's property tax levy.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Well, the year-to-date operating expenses are about $300,000 under budget.
Correct.
Do you expect, I mean, you say
Yes.
the difference is going to change, that'll decrease. Does it look like we will be on budget for the remainder of the year?
For personnel expenses, yes. Commodities, potentially. So a lot of the problems with commodities expenses is that when we're not fully staffed, which we almost are, managers and superintendents are spent, doing other work when they should be, or they normally would be focusing on making sure we have all the clean, grass seed, tree trimming unit. So yes, in regards to almost all the expenses for commodities and personnel, we should be coming in at budget or a little bit under because we weren't fully staffed for part of the year. If that answers your question.
Any further? motion to accept the financial reports as presented?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Greenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Lane.
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore.
Yes.
Commissioner Reader.
Yes.
Commissioner Welch.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
President Green.
Yes. Next, we have verbal communications. I'm up first with the president's report, but I will pass until we get to other agenda items. Report from staff.
You can see our reports start on page 4 of the packet. Really just a number of different things that are listed in there. I guess I wanted to kind of touch on, but I'm sure maybe the golf committee portion on the agenda we'll talk about a little bit more. I just wanted to touch on the fact that we have a successful event, Night of the Range event that hasn't been offered to the community since 2018. So we did that on Friday with several hundred people in attendance, a lot of families, a lot of young children. Really, weather fortunately held out for us, so it was a great evening and really nice turnout for the course. And I think that's all I have at this point, unless any of the other staff have anything at this point. No, that's it from staff. Yes.
Thank you. Scott, turn report.
I'll report.
Okay. Finance administration and future planning committee.
We have not met since our last board meeting. Myself and committee member Graziano performed a handful of interviews with potential candidates for the committee position opening. Narrowed it down to 2, and just want to finalize it with the other members of the committee so we can move forward.
Parks and Beach Committee, we have not met since last time. Facilities and programs.
We have not met, but do you want to mention the project or anything you want to know at this point, or wait till the?
We have it coming up.
Okay, so yeah, we haven't had the vision meeting.
Golf committee.
The golf committee met a couple of weeks ago where we reviewed progress so far at the golf course. We also went over programs that we are going to be offering this summer and have offered one already. As John alluded to, the Night on the Range was a big success. I think if any of the people out there were there or saw the pictures of it, you'll see there were, at any one time, there were a few hundred people out there. A lot of young kids. It worked out great. And I want to thank staff for putting this together and getting this going, because it was a program that everybody really enjoyed. And we're going to repeat it on August 13 before the first Buffini of it will be at the golf course. So, and then we'll get even more people. So we were very, very pleased with that. We've had golf yoga. We had 5 people at the last golf yoga who are enjoying it very much. And we have one more date for golf yoga this year. We also have our 2 programs for instruction. The one program starting July 28th for beginners. And that, the last I heard, we had 18 of the 24 spots filled. I would assume 20. So we're getting very close to having that full. And then the second program for somewhat more advanced golfers will start in September and run 2 classes a week. So that registration is just getting started. I don't know if we've had anyone register for that yet.
Are those co-ed classes?
Pardon?
Are those co-ed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. The results, we got the results, the June 30 results from Golf Vision in terms of rounds and revenue. Rounds are up about over 23% this year from last year, and revenue is up 29% from last year. So the revenue reflects the improved food and beverage offering and people eating and drinking more. And I was talking to the Illinois PGA representative at the night on the range, and she was saying that golf in Illinois, they look at it as being up around 20%. So I think we're probably doing a little bit better than the average golf course in Illinois. I played Sunday, and the manager, Paul Price, said it was the best weekend he's had. So that's going very, very well. We're very happy. Our committee has been doing a phenomenal job in putting these things together. And they are to be commended, staff is to be commended on what I think is very successful.
I second that. If anybody was out there on Friday night and got a chance to see, there's nothing more dear to the heart than watching a bunch of kids in a sand trap building sand castles. Exactly what it was intended for. So thank you, staff, for being so proactive to get shovels and pails for everybody who is out there. Thank you. Thank you.
And I especially want to thank staff because we had a mini crisis with the Golfzilla, which was the big attraction. When the electricity went out, and we couldn't power it. And we got one thing going, one
generator or something.
yeah, to get it going, had to do another one, but he got it going, and everybody got through the Golfzilla, and that was enjoyable. So.
Thank you. Friends of Lake Bluff Parks.
No update.
Rebola update report.
No update.
Commissioners' comments.
I'll pile in on the night at the range. I heard a lot of great feedback from around the community that it was, awesome, and everyone was saying, that's a great venue, that tent, let alone the golf course, if it's not for non-golf events, for anything, that it's safe and the kids can run around, and that we should host lots of events there because they really liked it.
Well, we do get two Bluffinias coming up as well as the fireworks, so there will be other golf course activities or golf-related activities going on. Okay, on to new business action items with pickleball tennis courts, the village letter suspending play. We're looking at the packet that has the village letter. How about if I kind of set the stage for how we got to where we are? We received the letter on July 13th, and I will say, even though I'll ask people to either refer to the letter, I don't have a big screen in front of me, so I'm going to kind of keep referring to it, so hopefully everybody has read it or they're able to access it in some way. Even though it does say regarding noise complaints, this letter is not about noise. It's about something entirely different from noise. It's about two ordinances within the village. One of them is a building permit, the other one is a zoning ordinance. And so I want to make sure that we kind of walk through this to say, why did we get this letter? Why did we get the letter in the tone that it's written? And how are we going to work with this as a board and as a community? Blair Park has been used for pickleball for quite some time. According to some staff members who have been here for a while, I mean, there were games being played out there, there were tournaments held out there as far back as 2015. So Blair Park has been a source for pickleball play since that time. In 2016, the Parks and Beach Committee, actually, which is kind of unusual, usually it's facilities, said that there was some play that was out at Artesian, but, and let me kind of step back, because there are a lot of people. When I refer to Artesian, I'm referring to the tennis courts at Artesian. When I refer to Blair, I'm referring to the Blair Park courts. The committee looked at that and they said they wanted to keep the tennis courts, U.S. Tennis Association standardized over at Artesian. So keep Blair as the pickleball destination, and lines were drawn around Blair to be able to do that. And so in 2016, there was a decision by the board to paint pickleball lines at Blair and use that for play. In 2021, we had it in our budget to resurface Blair Court because it needed it. And we had about $20,000 allocated at that time. Now, 2021, we're in the heart of COVID. We're looking for ways to be able to get together as a community, have some sort of sports, play outside. And the Friends of Lake Bluff Parks, which is our 501c3 organization, they're our fundraiser, said, we'll partner with you on this. Pickleball is on the rise. We will kick in $40,000 of donated funds so that the park district can kick in the other half and resurface the courts so that they can be used for pickleball, which was accepted all around. And there was a vote to be able to resurface the courts at Blair. In the Tri-Board newsletter, and if people still get those and they still read those, okay, come to your house, Tri-Board newsletter in autumn of 2021 references that we resurfaced the courts. So the community was very aware that this was being done at that time. In October is when we had the official unveiling, the community grand opening of the pickleball courts. And so we know that, obviously not hidden, everybody knew that these were being used for pickleball courts. And that's what happened as of 2021. Since that time, and looking at Blair Park, the Park District is really, we refer to this more now as a campus than we ever have before. We've got the rec center, we've got the pool, we've got golf, we've got paddle, and especially with staff input, the thought was to grow paddle. Obviously, the people are out there, they want to play, but the paddle hut is not used during the summer months. And if we could do the same kind of thing with paddle that has, with pickle that's been done with paddle, to grow that community. I know that our coach was talking about having a home team, starting to compete against other teams, growing the lessons, and that's what we did. We have, Jim, to make sure I'm right on the 69 memberships that were sold. And those memberships included use of the paddle hut, used to be able to come into the gymnasium as well, discount on the fitness center. So the thought was to use this campus environment to be able to grow pickle the same kind of way and really kind of establish that community. And we know that our neighbors, and we have 4 neighbors along Green Bay Road. We have 1 neighbor who is on the corner between Green Bay and Washington, and we have 3 neighbors who are along Washington Avenue. Okay? We know that some of those neighbors have expressed their complaint to the Park District about the pickleball noise. Okay? And we know if anyone's reading anything in the newspaper, it's all over the place with what's going on with people complaining about pickleball and the sound of pickleball. In April, on April 26th, our staff hand-delivered letters to all of our neighbors to say, we'd like to have an informal discussion with you. We'd like to sit down with Jim Lakeman, who's our superintendent. No, I believe you were there as well. No, he wasn't there. John Beeler, our executive director, and Emily Lane, who is the chair of the facilities committee, myself. So we could have an informal discussion and say, what can we do so that we are good neighbors to you? And it was, we felt it was a very good meeting. One of the very first things that was addressed was the start time. And yes, dawn to dusk is not an appropriate thing to do. So we said, yes, we'll implement that right away. 8 o'clock is a good start time because that's in conformance with what the village has as well. There were signs that were put up at the time. There were a couple of people who did not, follow the 8 a.m. rule, started a little bit earlier, and as a result, there had to be a lock put on the courts so that there was no play before 8 o'clock. But I'm going to say as a whole, most people were very respectful of that, and hopefully that helped our neighbors as well. On June 8th, we had a facilities and program meeting. This was a subcommittee, and the discussion was there about what we could do about sound mitigation. You've seen the great big screens that are going up all over the place in different kinds of venues. The proposal started to talk, and the staff at that time threw out a number. We could probably do something between $8,000 to $10,000 to be able to mitigate the sound that's coming from the pickleball courts. This came to the regular board meeting on June 26th, and staff at that time had explored a number of different options, and the price dramatically increased. It was up to $29,000 to be able to do panels for mitigation. Staff would be installing them themselves, but these were panels that are used in Glenview, Lincolnwood, Highland Park, Vernon Hills, and our executive director, John Thieler, had talked to Highland Park, and they said that they were very effective. When we went to our July 10th board meeting, and let me kind of go back a little bit, on June 26th, that's when a couple of board members volunteered to go to homes to be able to listen to the sound, to be able to record the decibel levels. And granted, Sue Raymore and Nikki Walsh are not engineers by training. Let me clarify, the decibel level on your phone is not the most accurate thing, and you're getting a lot of different ambient sound. But the neighbors were very gracious and said, please come over and listen. And that was, I'm glad these two did that kind of volunteer work. They also went to different communities to listen and see if these panels really are worth it, because it's great that staff had all of this information, but we needed to have that firsthand experience of what's happening with the sound mitigation. We learned at that time that one resident's home is further up the hill, and sound doesn't go around the sound panels, it travels up. And so there was discussion at that meeting as to maybe this isn't enough, maybe we can't just go up to the fence line, maybe we have to go up higher. And so that discussion was continuing, and it was going to be brought forth to this meeting tonight to be able to make a decision on what would be appropriate for sound mitigation. On July 10th, that was the report, and we talked about bringing it forward at this meeting. On July 10th, the village as well held their regular board meeting. Pickleball and sound mitigation was not on the agenda. It wasn't brought forward as any notation within the village for that evening. One of the trustees brought it up as a concern, bringing forward an anecdotal article from the New York Times. The village administrator, Drew Irwin, said at that time there were no complaints that were made to the village about sound. And the discussion was that we will explore this further. From July 10th to July 13th, there was a discussion between our executive director, John Thieler, and village administrator, Drew Irwin, and we received this letter on July 13th. We immediately had a discussion with our attorney. Given the tenor of the letter, given the there's language in here about immediately shut down the pickleball courts, and especially because of the threat of fines, the decision was made at a board level to immediately shut down the pickleball courts. We did not want to have exposure while we were going through this information, and especially because village ordinances, we obviously have to abide by them, but we don't live with them day by day. We live with the park board code. So this is something that we have to look at and explore. I'm going to say from more of a personal standpoint, up until a few years ago, I believe things were much more congenial with the village, much more collegial. This is a small town. We share the beach. The village has the road. We take care of the sand. We take care of the beaches. The ravine. Ravine is part public, part private, it's part village, part district. We have many ways that we're intertwined with the village. We're separate. We have different staff, we have different payrolls, we have different things, but we're a small village, we work together. And a lot of things happen with phone calls back and forth between an executive director and a village administrator, because you want to be moving forward. We're all relying on tax dollars. Half of our revenue from our district comes from tax dollars, the other half is from programs. And so we're responsible for spending your dollars wisely. We want to make sure that things go well and move forward. Again, I go back to why now, why this tone, why this letter. Our mission as a park district is fun. It's in our mission. We want to make sure that we are good neighbors to the people who live around us, to anybody who's exposed to any sort of park. But we also want to make sure that we provide fun for people in this community. Our staff, that's what they work for. They want to make sure that we have fun. I will say, we always talk about Lake Bluff values, it's not Lake Bluff way, things like that. Looking out, obviously, I know a lot of your faces in the pickleball community. Obviously, I've seen you in different clothes, but it's nice to see you all dressed up tonight. But I will say this is a community that really embodies what we are here in Lake Bluff. This is the pickleball community. If you go out into a court and you don't have a paddle, someone will give you a paddle. If you're a first-time player, someone's going to teach you how to play. There's rotation, there's, sitting down and having, a beverage afterwards. It's all of those things that we embody in Lake Bluff, and I shouldn't just say Lake Bluff because the Park District is Lake Bluff, Millwood, and North Chicago. But it's all of those friendly spirits that we have, and that's what pickleball has grown into, especially here. That's why when we received this letter, and I'll kind of go into the fact that I'm an attorney by training, this is not my role, this is where I defer to Scott, but one of the things that I have to bring forward, which was very disconcerting to me, was the use of the word illegal. The only entity that can render something illegal is a court. It's not a village administrator, it's not a village president, it's not a park district board president. The only person who can say something is illegal is when it's decided by a court. So to read the tone of this letter and to read illegal pickleball courts immediately puts a tone in people's minds that accelerates this kind of animosity. The two codes that are cited here, the first one is a building permit. And historically, when we have had work done within the Park District, again, that kind of informal relationship with the village to say that we are going to be repaving the parking lot. We're going to put down new asphalt. Making sure that our executive director talks to the village administrator, or NOAA superintendent talks to somebody over at the village, so that we're going to be doing this. Do we need a permit for this? And I'm going to say historically, these permits have been waived. Why? Because again, we're all the same taxpayer base. And many times we are able to fund these things because we have a grant, or because we have some ability to find, or even, as I said, with the pickleball courts, it's charitable dollars. It's people who have donated money, and they're not going to charge us a building permit on top of that. That's been historical. So to read this language in this letter that says that we allegedly violated code and didn't seek out a building permit for a pickleball court that everyone has known has been in existence since 2021, and why are we receiving this now, continues to be the question. What is the cure for that? For violating a building permit? I guess that's something we're going to have to discuss, but again, with reading the last sentence on here that said we would be subject to fines of between $25 to $750 a day, the decision was made to not test the village and to shut the pickleball courts down. The second ordinance that was brought up was an RIO, which is a recreational, institutional, and open space district with a special permit. We received a special permit in order to build the paddleball huts, to build the paddle courts at that time. What the village is explaining here is that when we received that special permit, it showed tennis courts. And that we took those tennis courts and altered, changed them, and made them into pickleball courts, and therefore we were defying their zoning ordinance about the tennis courts. Again, why this language now? Why this very, I'm sorry, I have to call it an aggressive tone. Why this aggressive tone? But again, with the same kind of thing, fines of $25 to $750 a day. We did not want to, especially as this is under review from our attorney, we did not want to risk that kind of a chance with doing that. Here's where the real problem comes in. The next steps. Because the next steps suggested by the village administrator was immediately apply for a RIO plan. But at the same time, it suggests being a good neighbor. And the village is aware of the work that we've been trying to do to be a good neighbor. So we were working toward that end. The other one was immediately suspend play at the pickleball courts. And this is again where it's an interesting interpretation, because if in one breath you're saying you're violating zoning, how can you in the second breath say you can open up the pickleball courts from 10 till 5, ban it on Sundays, very, very specific. How can you do that on a temporary basis when you're telling us in the first breath these are violating building permit and these are violating a zoning ordinance? You can't have both at the same time. And again, that's why we had to consult counsel on this. I know there's been suggestions of open it up and use it for tennis. That's what it was originally suggested for. But at the same time, if we're told that we're allegedly violating a building permit or allegedly violating a zoning permit, we're not going to take that risk to do something like that until we have clarity as to why this is wrong by the village and how we can best react to this. I'm going to say, this has put us in a predicament, obviously, not just with the pickleball community, but with many other organizations. I would trust that the village trustees know that this letter was sent. I trust that they know that this affects lessons. This affects the Union Church. Had a fundraiser scheduled in the next week. I believe they're scrambling to find another location. We have a tennis camp for kids that was planned. We cannot use the pickleball the courts for that purpose. I trust they know that we're losing revenue because of this. A concern, obviously, is the time that this is going to take, because it took a while to build this number of people who are using pickleball. And we as a board don't want to see you go someplace else. We want Lake Bluff to be the home of this kind of play and this kind of enjoyment. And if this is going to take going through all these different kinds of procedures that we would have to take in front of the village, this could take a year, more, and what do we do in the meantime? I'm going to say that the concern right now is we have to tread lightly. If in the past this was done over phone calls, conversations, nothing was brought forward to claim illegal, and now it is. We have a tri-board meeting. We sit down with the village and the school once a month and truly break bread together. We have lunch. But if a conversation between our executive executive director and the village administrator results in a letter warning us, threatening us, that changes the tone that we can have with our other partners in this town. I don't want to see it that way. I mean, I don't want to have legal counsel there every time the two executive directors talk, or anytime anybody talks to anybody from the village. It shouldn't have to be that way. But we now are faced with this situation of how to deal with this. So I said my piece. I will go ahead and turn it over, I think, to Scott, really well, if there's anything the board wants to chime in.
I'd like to make a comment.
Please, yeah.
In the beginning of 2019, I was asked, before we were on the board, we were running for election, we were not on the board. I was asked to be a member of a task force that was appointed to look at helping the finances of racket sports in general in the Park District. My recollection, other than the fact that we came up with the preferred solution which we have today, was how at that time there were several people on the task force, some of you perhaps, 4 years ago, I don't remember, who kept saying how popular pickleball has become. And, you know, I think one of the women would wear a t-shirt saying pickleball players are the greatest or something like that. And it became clear to us that this was a sport that was really growing in popularity and would continue to grow in popularity. And we've seen that over the last several years. We've seen how pickleball all across the country and the world really has become such a popular sport. It's incumbent upon us as Park District Commissioners to provide facilities and programs that the residents of the Park District want. And I think we have taken and will continue to take measures to do that on behalf of pickleball players. I'm disturbed when I read, you know, that we have to be good neighbors. I'm a little tired of being told that we have to be good neighbors, but the other party doesn't. As a good neighbor, we have taken serious steps to investigate sound litigation for the pickleball players. We've had samples of various materials that are being used that we passed around and looked at and discussed. And we've done this in good faith. We've got cost estimates for it. We've tried to plan out from a budget point of view when we can do all this work. And to me, it's distressing that we have an activity that clearly is popular among Park District residents, where we've taken positive steps to recognize the noise issues that neighbors have, and that we end up receiving a letter like this, as you say now. And I think it's unfortunate that we've gotten to that point. But again, we have to seriously look at these things. Now, I have a question, and Scott, I don't know if you, Scott Puma, I don't know if you can help, or John. First of all, on page 2 of the letter, the first sentence says, the district operates and maintains the existing 140-acre Park District area facilities, commonly known as Bluff Park. Now, the 140 acres seems, from a factual point of view, the golf course is 150 acres, or just shy of 150 acres. Now, I haven't taken a ruler out, but the rest of the Bluff Park cannot be as big as the golf course. So I question that aspect. What exactly were they looking at? Why are they referring to 140-acre Park District area? I think the entire, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but isn't the entire Park District, the rest of the entire Park District outside of the golf course 140 acres?
The golf course is about 145 acres. maybe know will remember the rest of Blair Park. You can look that up. You have that spreadsheet.
Yeah, I can pull it up on the
Yeah, we can clarify that for you, but it's not as large.
I thought we were told at one point that the golf course is roughly half the area of the park district.
Yes, so
But then
the beach is all of the parks,
Yeah.
that's pretty close.
So I'm looking at that. That's a question that I think, whether the factual side of this is accurate. It's something we need to look at.
Well, just to, the wrong ordinance was cited, is that correct? It's not,
Yes.
they cited an incorrect ordinance, so.
Now, the other question I have, this implies that the entire Blair Park area, of however many acres it is, has been zoned single-family residence until 2019.
There was underlying zoning of the residential and districts, and there were special uses that were granted for different uses, including for this facility, and then also for the paddle tennis since then. And in 2019, the village code was amended to create this recreational district, and this property and other park district properties were put into that zoning classification. So the underlying zoning is this RIO district, and the special uses for the fitness center, the paddle tennis, the tent, and the golf course that you were referring to earlier, those are all part of that zoning. So as a recreational parcel, the pickleball is one of the uses that would typically be expected in a recreational zoning district, just like tennis, baseball, any of those kind of things. Those uses are not defined in the village code. Recreation and leisure are permitted uses in this RIO district, a pool, which is pretty obvious. Those are permitted uses. So then the question is, how do you get those permitted uses to be permitted, apparently, under their interpretation?
So if we had changed to badminton, if we had changed to volleyball, if we had changed to basketball, we would have to ask permission of the village.
I believe that's their interpretation of their code.
So we don't have autonomy in that way to be able to change a recreational use of, we're not changing the size, we're not changing a dimension, we're not going higher or lower, we're just changing a designated area. But if we choose to do something other than what was originally specified, the village is interpreting it that way.
So some of those are a little bit different. So if you were to change the tennis courts to a basketball or volleyball facility, that probably is a little bit closer of a question as to, are you changing the use? But we're talking racket sports that are very similar in this instance. So that's really the question of the change of use. Is it really a change of use, or are they substantially similar?
So going to squash, handball,
That's,
badminton.
yes.
And just to clarify, there was no change in the footprint of the courts, correct? It was just resurfacing of that same space?
Yeah, so the fencing wasn't changed, footprint wasn't changed, drainage, any of that, only the very top of that surface. There were cracks in the surface, about the top inch or so was milled off, and a new layer of asphalt and painting.
And you talked to the landscape architects.
We did use a certified landscape architect as a consultant for this job, who helped preparing the bid package and overseeing the project, who also felt that this was, it was not changing a use of the court. And it didn't require, doing submitting for a permit.
Now, the golf course was separately rezoned, wasn't it? When the golf course was built?
768? I believe so.
I don't know right now. I don't remember.
I thought, actually, Jim might remember, I thought it was rezoned, or maybe the village rezoned it so that it was not to be done for single-family zoning, so houses couldn't be built. Is that, do you remember, Jim?
It sounds familiar. I think last year during the discussions it was pointed out that or we learned that is recreational, institutional.
Scott, you mentioned that the wrong code was cited. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the ordinance, in the second page, in the second paragraph, they cited to ordinance 2004-09, which, as the ordinance that granted the SUP, the special use permit for the paddle tennis. Actually, that was in 2008. But the balance of the sentence or the balance of the paragraph they quoted, those are the correct conditions, they just had the wrong ordinance number. So the rest of the conditions, et cetera, are correct from the 2008 ordinance. It did make things confusing. The 2004 ordinance related to this building and the expansion of this building.
So if we could go into the alleged violation of the building code.
Okay. So the building code provision that they alleged, and they quoted correctly from their ordinances, I would expect, is that it is unlawful to construct, enlarge, repair, alter, and demolish a structure to change the occupancy of a building or structure. So the question becomes, is this a structure under the building code that requires a permit? And if it does, one wasn't obtained, but it could have, that happens a lot, really. People don't get permits, and then after the fact, there's something that's typically called an after the fact permit, where they go out and look at things. People build decks, they put up fences, they don't get their holes inspected. People certify that they built the deck with a 42-inch pier so that and then the village gives them an after-the-fact permit. So that happens pretty frequently. People change their air conditioning, windows, roofs sometimes without a permit, and it happens. And sometimes a lot of times it's a mistake or just a lack of knowledge. Here, it appears that it just wasn't on the radar. You had a contractor, an asphalt contractor, and they didn't seem to think that there was a permit necessary either, because they're the ones getting the stop work order with a truck full of asphalt, so that they can't do anything with hot mix asphalt, and there's nothing they can do with it. So they didn't seem to think there was a permit either or follow up on that. So they didn't actually get into that part that you should come and apply for a permit. It was more about the zoning. So there doesn't seem to be a heck of a lot of concern about the construction or whether that part was done to code. It was milled, and Kevin explained that, I think, to the village administrator, and that doesn't seem to be that concern here.
Okay. And yet this is something that they're
alleging
they're
violating. Right.
What about the zoning?
Zoning's a little bit trickier because there's a lot of different questions in conditions that they put into it, but when you dig down into it, the question is, under 1016-7, no person may conduct or be entitled to establish any use or obtain a building permit or other applicable permitting to construct, reconstruct, alter, or move a building or structure. And those are defined in the zoning ordinance differently than the building code. And a building is something that rough, like you think, and then a structure doesn't really seem to include the sport court, the tennis court, because patios, driveways, and walks in grade will generally not be considered to be structures under this title. So it's the equivalent of a sports court is the equivalent of a driveway, but then it goes a little bit further and it talks about exemptions and what is exempt from the requirements, and the exemptions include maintenance to or repair of existing improvements, including without limitation repainting, resurfacing, resealing, restriping, or repaving of existing improvements. It seems to be pretty much exactly what was done out there. And then also, or out here because we're close, within an existing part, the addition, rearrangement, or reconfiguration of playground equipment, recreation equipment, or open air shelters. Recreational equipment is undefined, but we're talking about rearrangement or reconfiguring a net for a racket sport, essentially. But the courts, as I understand it, can still be used for tennis, so there are express exemptions that seem to apply here. And something that we need to have some further conversations with the village about.
Can I just interject real quick? And this is a question for John and staff. We've kind of colloquially referred to them as pickleball courts. John, are any other activities used on these courts?
Tennis. We sell one tennis court where we do our very popular youth tennis program and pickleball.
Okay.
So it's a multi.
So it's could we call it a racket sports court or something to that effect? I feel like using pickleball courts is really not the proper terminology in this case.
Yeah, I call them pickleball / tennis courts.
Okay.
In the package.
All right.
So the sentence that's in the third paragraph down on the second page 3 that says converting the tennis courts to pickleball courts is not consistent with the amended special use permit and is in violation of the zoning code, subject to fines of not less than $25 or more than $750 per day for each day of violation. They're not exclusively pickleball courts. The tennis ball is multi-use courts. Scott, have any of these ordinances had any tie-in with noise?
No, they don't really. The village code does address noise. Can I go back real quick? Yeah. The paddle tennis application removed 2 tennis courts and left 2. There's no mention, excuse me, there's no mention in that paddle tennis ordinance about the tennis courts that were existing that were left remaining. So they're just shown on the drawings, and the narrative is we're going to replace 2 in paddle tennis. So the special use didn't grant tennis, full-size tennis, I think, so I can't remember who said USTA size tennis courts. That's not part of the ordinance. There's nothing that ties anything to those 2 existing tennis courts and says they must remain tennis that I've seen, and it's just part of the schematic, just like there's trees that are shown in the schematic. Then relative to noise, there are certain noise standards under the village code.
Can I just clarify? So what they're referencing here for the special use just shows a schematic of tennis. It doesn't designate that location has to be tennis.
It's a site plan, and the site plan, the purpose of the site plan was to build a paddle tennis, to put 4 paddle tennis courts and the hut in.
Okay.
It wasn't to build 2 new tennis courts. Those tennis courts were existing. It was to remove 2 and then put down the new paddle.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the village's interpretation of a schematic is that it has to remain as tennis and cannot be converted to anything else.
Yes.
But there's nothing in the language that says that.
Right, and that also kind of flies in the face of some other things that, you know, practically speaking, you don't have to keep tennis for the rest of eternity till the end of time either. So you do have some say in how your property is used.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, please go ahead about the noise.
So the noise standards, abutting a residential district, there is a noise standard of I believe it's 60 decibels is the bottom line for the abutting. The village didn't cite to the decibel for the noise issue, and they, despite having complaints, in my opinion, because they didn't have a study and there's nothing objective that they could say that's reliable. Most municipalities are slow to enforce their noise ordinances because you have to do a lot in order to get reliable evidence that there is a violation. So,
but there's nothing in either of these codes that would tie to the noise ordinance?
No, there isn't. The only thing relative to noise, there were concerns that were raised when the paddle tennis was coming in, and that was tied to the hours of operation. When the tent was going in, the hours of operation were also regulated, and then they were expanded, as were the paddle tennis hours, I believe. Very, very little, but they were expanded.
Scott, under the village's interpretation, what seems to be the village's interpretation, would it not be permitted for us to put lines down in the gym in this building for pickleball?
Yeah, so that you know, you've got a fitness center here, and you have a special use for a fitness center, so then that does raise a question of, well, what's a fitness center, what's the uses, and if you're changing what you're doing, if you're gonna have indoor wiffle ball, you didn't have that before, is that something that you can't have? But I know there's paddle tennis in here because I watched it one time a while ago when I came into a meeting, and so that has definitely evolved or changed since it was basketball, probably primarily when it came in, and volleyball. But under their interpretation, are they going to say you can't change it? I'm not sure. That's a fair question.
So by virtue of us having pickleball inside and lining the gym, when we did the resurfacing to include pickleball lines as well as basketball lines, the village could possibly come back with yet another?
Well, it'd be interesting to see. I'm saying it would be interesting to see what their position would be on that, and to get an answer to that question in a meeting or in some other forum where somebody was saying why this had to be that way. So it would be a question of how far do they believe their ordinance has to go or can go.
So in essence, the village, this interpretation is implying that any change we want to make to our facilities in keeping with the changing needs of the community have to be approved by the village.
So it's really the change in use. There is a standard. That's a little bit of an over simplification. It would be a new use, or to obtain a permit to construct, reconstruct, or alter or move any building or structure. So let's say you did want to put a new building on the property for something here, that would require going through their public hearing process, through their planning and zoning commission process. Because you need a building permit for that change to alter the structure. So then we'll look at this situation, was this a permitting thing that triggered that, and it seems to be exempt. But if you were, I think you would be, you're also supposed to have this development plan for the entire parcel under this ordinance that's only good for 5 years, and then they can come back in 5 years and have you get another approval to extend it, which is pretty onerous and a bit out of character for most municipalities. So that's what they're saying, is you need a development plan for the campus, basically.
Did I hear you correctly? You said we've never done that?
No, there is no development. Since 2019, when this ordinance came in, the park district didn't apply for any type of a park plan, development plan, no.
So if we, tomorrow, open up the pickleball courts, and the village still has this position of alleged violations of code, what would the village do? What could the village do, I should say?
There's really two options. One is they could give you a citation for a violation of their ordinance, like essentially a traffic ticket, and cite the park district for acting that way, and then that's where the fines come in. Only a court can impose fines, so then that would, the question would be whether the village was violating the village code. The other would be for them to file a lawsuit to say that the park district's violating the zoning ordinance or operating without a permit, and that an injunction should issue to stop the action. That would be the two typical.
So issue a citation or accelerate and get an injunction through a lawsuit.
That file a lawsuit.
Okay.
I have a question, but I don't want to interrupt this line.
No, go ahead.
Conversation.
Please.
Have we started looking at potential revenue loss?
Yes.
Okay, what kind of numbers have we?
Well, we're just starting to put them together, so I don't have reliable numbers that I can give you yet. And either we're pausing memberships and extending those, but allowing them to still use those memberships for indoor drop-in play without paying a daily fee. So there's obviously some classes we're trying to accommodate some where we can to put more time in the gym. It's difficult in the summer because the gym is a backup for day camp. If it rains, they have to come in, so maybe we really have to keep that space open. So they're, it's just hard, they're putting together, like, what it's gonna cost, week to week for, revenue that we are potentially losing, but I don't have the numbers for you yet.
If we get those as soon as practical, that would be great.
Yeah,
so
I would say
within the
next,
analysis could be.
I'm sure, within the next day or so, we should have that. I can distribute that to the commissioners.
Okay. Thank you.
John, I'm just trying to understand how we got here, right? Like you are doing.
How did we get here?
So the couple questions I have, you had alluded, Jennifer, that in the past, one executive to the other would call and talk about work done and get a waiver. Was that done in this case, or did we not even do that because we didn't think we needed to?
Now, typically, so there's a couple of different things. A lot of times we can ask the village to waive the fee. So we did that with, for instance, the improvements out at Sunrise Beach pathway, and the village did waive those fees. As far as waiving a permit is different, a lot of times we'll call them and we'll have a questionable project that might be more maintenance than it is like an improvement or a new structure. And so we'll call and talk to them, and then they'll say, yeah, you don't need to submit for that. That's not really worth it. So it kind of goes both ways. It just depends on, again, on the project itself.
So was there any discussion between the village and the park district?
For this one?
Instance? I'm just curious, I'm not.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a fair question. And frankly, we don't remember because we have so many projects stuck to know what would be between us, possibly the landscape architect. So did we ever call and ask, is this something that needs a permit or not? I don't remember, because sometimes we can do it several times a year, just depending on the project.
Just looking up. One other thing, you mentioned that on what the date was, April 26th, you hand-delivered letters. What precipitated that action? I think I missed that.
So we were aware that there was, we received a complaint about sound. And so then that started in the fall. Last year, we received one complaint, and then things were kind of quiet, and it started to pick up again as play picked up in spring. So we wanted to do a neighborhood meeting and engagement, try to bring the neighbors in, meet with staff, and a couple of commissioners to look at some different options to try to give some relief there, such as setting the later starting time, which was agreed on, and that was a good idea at the meeting. I think we had signs printed within 3 days and posted out there. It's mostly helped. There's a few occasions that they still started playing a little bit earlier, so we've gone to locking up the gates and unlocking them later. We also have printed some additional signage that we added to the gates themselves. Also asked, to have a message put out on the WhatsApp. There's a large group of pickleball players that follow that. Just asking them that they respect that starting time and all of that. And so those were just some of the measures as we were looking at the sound mitigation options.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering about how this precipitated that. I hadn't heard anything. Okay.
And I don't want to finger point back and forth, but if our district was relying on a landscape architect for whether we should get a permit that's valid.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah.
No, and the thing is, and that's why I keep saying, why this, why now?
Right.
That's what it's, a big question as to, this wasn't hidden in any way, shape, or form. This was a very active use of tennis and pickleball on this court, and it occurred in 2021, so
But it's also 2016.
Yeah, actually, it started in 16. Yeah, and they started as early as 2015. The Park District started doing some programming out there with pickleball, doing lessons, and just using temporary at first, taping the lines, and then eventually paying. But actually, 2015 is when they started with pickleball on these courts.
Is there any, statute of limitations?
No, not really. So it's very hard to get, it's called a estoppel, to get a estoppel against a union government to say, well, you sat on your rights, you sat on your hands, and you knew this, unless there was some active part by the municipality to say, oh no, you didn't have to get a permit or something, and we haven't uncovered that yet because it's been a pretty short time frame, that could cut against them, but just the fact that they
ignored it for 3 years.
Yeah, well, the use, and then the new courts, that's tough to get in. It's an argument you make. What did you know and when did you know it, that kind of stuff, but it doesn't always win against the unit government.
Are we still in the same predicament, and I'm trying to problem solve with this, and I'm sure we all are as a board, to say how can we serve everybody best with this? Even looking at Artesian, we've got the same problem with special use, don't we? So we can't even put up temporary pickleball nets up there because the same zoning letter could come in.
Correct. Right. It would seem to be kind of parallel lines, so, parallel tracks.
I don't know what the end game is on this. I mean, this is really, they're putting, the village has put us in a position of, we can't, and that's why when they talk about the next steps, we can't do this without their position of saying that we're in violation, so we can't open up even on a temporary basis, so this thought of being good neighbors. We can't go any further with saying we'd like to serve folks who want to use these courts and open up on a temporary basis on limited hours because they're still saying an alleged zoning violation. And we can't use Artesian because, again, we don't have zoning permission in this place.
So at some point, there would have to be, if the Park District were to reopen the courts under some conditions, and there was no action, let's say you applied for a permit, and I'm not advocating for that, I mean for zoning relief, there would have to be some type of a standstill understanding that they weren't going to prosecute in the interim. I mean, his letter says as much, that they're not going to prosecute, but that's contingent on some other things, and I don't know that the Park District and the board can live with the conditions. So I
don't want to jump too far ahead. Are they saying that there could be a permanent ban on pickleball? I mean, is that really what this is looking for?
They want to review it. They want to know if you're going to have pickleball. That's how I would interpret it.
Are we past the point of just calling the village and saying, can we have a sit down? We are.
That's a good question.
My recommendation would be to outline our legal position and to suggest that there be a meeting to discuss it and to discuss a way forward. That seems like the best way to go forward here, so that they can say where they're coming from, and I think we can answer. I think we have some pretty good points here as to how this came about, and also how a way forward.
Quick question here: what's to stop any residents, citizens, for just setting up their own pickleball court at Blair Park or at Fusion Park? It's not Park District sanctioned.
One of my neighbors has one of those portable ones, and we live in an area which has basically an alley, and they stripe the alley and pull the net out of the garage and play pickleball out there. And there's really nothing.
Right, but I'm trying to think, it's Park District property, right, those courts? So are we supposed to be upholding that, oh, you can't play here because the village says you might be in violation? Is that up to us? Like, who kind of says, no, you can't do this here?
That'd be up to you. Really, I think it'd be up to your property. I mean, if somebody comes out with one of those portable nets and sets the thing up and does it, it would be really up, in my opinion, it'd be up to you. It's just like any other kind of use. If somebody's flying a radio controlled airplane, you may not want that, but you may not care.
Yeah, we just opened the pickleball courts. Say, would you please not play?
I know, no.
If you open their park court and say it's for tennis only and people play, but something other than tennis, what's going to happen? Is that going to come through and issue an injunction through the courts?
Well, but there's also like a big
Tickets to the people who are playing the other sport.
Yeah.
This was a reason that we decided to resurface in the manner that we did, is because people were setting up their courts, and it was like, oh man, we see the popularity of this. Like, we as a park district need to look at what's best for the future of the community, and therefore we're like, yeah, sure, it's going to be an investment in the community. I remember using that term in one of these meetings, right? So if the demand's still there, then people are going to play with it. Whether we spend all this money and make these nice sports for the participants, but if we're being threatened with this, that's not what happened.
We still need to talk about next steps on this, but I don't know, is it an appropriate time to get public opinion too before we continue to talk next steps?
Because it might be in the executive session.
I think we'll do so. So at this point, I would like to invite visitors to be able to comment. Again, it is a 3-minute time. We're asking that each person take one turn to be able to comment. We will take notes. If you ask us a question, we'll take down the question. We'll try to get back to you in some way, shape, or form after this, but we're going to engage back and forth. I want you to understand that because we want to be moving. Please, for the folks who are here, if there's anyone who'd like to comment.
You
And
still want
please
me
step
to?
up if you can. You don't need to say, other than your name, we'd like to know who you are, you don't need to say your address, you don't need to say anything else. It doesn't matter whether you're a resident of Lake Bluff or any other community, but please, go out there. Please, yeah.
Do you still want me to read the timer?
Yeah, we are going to time you, and I
I don't need 3 minutes. My name is Patty Durkin. I live in Lake Bluff. I love pickleball. I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate everything you're trying to do here. I think the letter was written so that the anger is directed at you as opposed to the facts that we all know. So I don't know what the answer is. I was hoping there could be a compromise, but I unfortunately think it's going to be kind of ugly. I'm very disappointed in the village for taking this hard stance, and I will let them know my disappointment tomorrow. But thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Colleen Nicholas, I'm at 122 Switchwood, and I concur. I think that you all are doing the best to serve the community's interests, and pickleball obviously is, it just blows my mind that it's being viewed as such a violation. And this is a racket court, we're still playing a racket sport on. And I feel like it's a slippery slope, what they're going after you for, because do we or do we not ice skate on a baseball field in the winter? And where is this precedent going to take us next? I see kids playing soccer in the outfield of the baseball field. We have new basketball courts at the school. Kids are rollerblading on it, and I think it's wonderful. And you know what? Basketball's noisy, paddle's noisy, but it's awesome. These are good sounds. This is what we want to hear. We want to hear people having a good time, whether it be on the golf course, at the beach, in the school parking lots. Good for you guys. Get out there and play. Our summers are a minute long. We're not asking for much. We just want to have a good time in our very short summer. So maybe we pay the fee. I think collectively we could all pitch in and pay the, I don't know why there's a range of $25 to $750. So can we sign up for the $25 fee? And we'll cover it. It's a very complex situation. And it's not that, I mean, this is a simple thing. But making something so simple, this is a North Shore problem. This is, let's get over it. Let's just have a good time as a community and get through this. So thank you.
I'm Joe Paulson, and I'm at random points, and you can look them up later and respond however you might see fit. First of all, I'm sympathetic to the neighbors. I mean, I think pickleball can be very loud, and I think the steps that you guys have taken to explore sound mitigation, options is a reasonable step, and we should continue to pursue that because we need it no matter where we put pickleball courts. I think we need to clear up the factual items that Scott's outlined. I think we need to dig out any and every communication between the Park District and the village from 2021 regarding the resurfacing to see if there's any inkling that there was a tacit agreement that this was okay from the village. I think, including interviews of former village trustees, executives, administrators. I think we should immediately seek permission from the residences. We don't need all of them, we need a majority of them, to give us permission to play in the modified timeline that the village suggests by their letter. Then I think we need to inventory every improvement that could conceivably violate the building permit issue to show that it's a ridiculous assertion that they've made. Things like ice skating on a baseball field, things like putting the tape on the basketball courts here for pickle in the winter. I think we need to explore who actually, if we file a revised ROI or a sub for the Blair Park courts, racket sport courts, who approves that? And do we have a likelihood of getting that through anyway? Right? I think we need some advice from you all about how and who to advocate or lobby at the village. right? Because it's not just your problem. They've taken a stance. We're citizens. We should be lobbying and advocating at the village. I think that the Park District should file in the courts immediately for an injunction to continue without risk of the fines until this issue is resolved. Because it's a dispute over an opinion at this point. I think we should, Jennifer, you should probably call Drew tomorrow and ask him why this, why not. There's nothing wrong with having that cordial dialogue that we've all come to expect, and we should do that now. And we could open up tomorrow with the village's permission. Here's the condition, we want to open up, do you agree?
Anyone else? No? We'll go to folks who may be participating by Zoom.
Gail Gamareth.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Gail.
Hi, this is Gail Gamrath. It's taking me great courage to speak here tonight. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Because it's a few houses against Pickle Nation, and we know the love for pickleball. We are longtime residents, and I grew up in Lake Bluff, and we live 25 feet from the pickleball courts. Please try and pause in your frustration for a moment to put yourself in our shoes. Imagine if you could never use your backyard during daylight hours again without sounds that reach 70+ decibels. That is the same sound level as a leaf blower at least 75 feet away, and at the pitch of a backing up dump truck, and that beeping. Imagine never being able to sleep past 8 a.m., originally 5 a.m., again, not with your windows open or closed. Imagine having to move your mom's 85th birthday party inside because she says, I am just sorry, Gail, I can't hear above that racket over there, after you've set up a beautiful table in your yard. Imagine having to close your sliding glass door to even hear your TV, sometimes past 9 o'clock on the late night hours when it's still light. It may be hard to picture your own homes turning into this level of dysfunction. The noise goes into every corner of our house. This is not a sight line of a building built next to your home issue. This comes into our home. We have always embraced and loved all the sounds and energy coming over our fence. We bought this house knowing that we would have noise from the Park District. We have noise from Green Bay Road too, but the back of our house is our haven. From swim meets to golf course parties, we have always partnered with the Park District. And in the days of Ron Salsky's, the neighbors were always invited to meetings, asked for their input, and partnered with the Park District. You may not be aware that when the paddle courts went in, there were 5 meetings with the neighbors. The neighboring residences and the park board commissioners traveled together to other paddle court sites together to discuss lights, play times, and sound. It was a true partnership. The April 26th meeting Jennifer Beeler referenced was one that was put together after we asked for help, and we had been asking for a year. There was no meetings about these courts ever before they were built. And I do not remember pickle being played there since 2015. Maybe I missed it, but we're on those courts all the time. No one from the Park District Executive John Beeler has never come to our backyard to hear the noise after repeated invitations. To say you are working on this is a serious, gross overstatement. We've been asking for help for over a year. Yes, thank you to the 2 commissioners who did stop by, but the suggestions put out by the Park District Facility Committee would have actually made the situation louder. When talking about the price of mitigation, one commissioner said it's a lot to do for 9 houses. Another commissioner said he thinks the problem will resolve itself, and it's a lot of money to spend. So please do not pretend you are doing serious work. We have been laying awake at night considering how we can sell our house because no one should have to live like this, and who is ever going to buy our house? We can't afford to sell our house as we try to put 3 kids through college. How could the Park District do this to their residents? Well, it turns out they did it illegally. They never vetted this through the zoning board, a legal process we all have to go through on our own process. They never went to the village for permits. They never did any sound research. They did nothing legal in the construction of these courts. If they had, we would not be in the situation. They would be located somewhere great for all. It was a surprise to us on Friday morning that the village realized this illegality and had to act. We had not talked to them. Thank goodness to Drew Irvin and the village that stepped in. We have nothing against pickleball or pickleball players. We all play ourselves. We understand why you are angry. Please do not direct that at the neighbors who have lost thousands in their property values, and more important, their quality of life in their own homes.
Thank you. 3 minutes.
Do not question my kids or write about us on social media.
Gail, thank you. You're 3 minutes. Thank you for your time.
Next comment is from Rich.
I'm sorry, from Rich? Rich, thank you.
Spoken over.
I'm sorry. You know what, I understand that Rich spoke originally, he can have 3 minutes again as well. Any problems with?
He spoke on pickleball for 3 minutes.
I know, but, and we generally have a standing policy to have one person speak at a time. Do we have other people who want to speak tonight?
There is nobody else.
Please, let's give them the 3 minutes.
Go ahead, Rich.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I found it interesting, you know, at the beginning of the meeting, the president mentioned that there shouldn't be any disparagement of others. That was a policy. But then she spent about 20 minutes doing just the same to the village administrator and the village, which is very concerning to me. And there's always this sort of conspiracy theory. Why is this happening now? I think it's pretty clear why it's happening now. It's because the residents in that area who are grossly affected by this have been complaining for over a year, and nothing's happened up until like the last month or so. So let's dispel this whole distraction that, you know, why is this happening now? Well, it's happening now because nothing had been really done up until like the last month or so. So it's, I feel for the Gamrats. I know them. I play pickleball, and I feel absolutely terrible that this has been going on for so long and nothing had been done. I was in a meeting with the executive director and the park president over a year ago, and this conversation came up even though we were meeting on something else. So I know it's been discussed ad nauseum for quite a while, and it's just very disappointing that you know it's come to this point. But I think that's why the village is saying, hey, you got to step up and do something. Thank you.
Anything further?
I have a question.
Yes.
Let's finish to see if anyone else has any.
Okay. No, there are only 2 hands. That's it, Jeff, right?
Correct. There's no more.
Thank you. Thank you.
Has the village board and or the village zoning committee discussed this issue?
To the best of our knowledge, no. Drew said at the meeting on July 10th, and I invite everybody to watch the minutes or watch the video of that, there were no complaints that were made to the village at that time.
So the village is what?
Well, that's why I referenced in the beginning, this doesn't reference a noise complaint. I know, and these are matters ancillary to noise. We want to. No one here is saying that pickleball is, and the sound that comes from pickleball is not an issue. It's all over the place. It really is. And there are park districts that are fighting with villages, that are fighting with residents, that are fighting with all different sorts of HOAs. There's talk about green paddles. There's talk about tagging people to go in there and to play pickleball because they need to have a green paddle and special balls. They're foam balls. I think anyone who plays pickleball can say pretty quickly that's not fun. But that's something that's entirely different. But this letter from the village does not reference noise. It references different ordinances. And our concern as a park district, because we are representing taxpayers, we are representing all the residents in the community, is what's the best approach to make sure that our neighbors, we are respectful to them, and we mitigate the sound, and we make sure that hours are appropriate, but we're hamstrung at this point. We can't do that because we're told we can't even open up the courts because of the alleged zoning violation. So,
but neither the village board nor the village zoning committee have heard this issue. Discuss this.
It's never been on their agenda.
Not our pickle. I know that there was discussion with the sport court, and I was told that was turned down to do the pickle on that.
Okay. I'd like to, in hearing what was said tonight, I agree. Our summer is over in a second. There's not much time left. I want to be able to accelerate this as much as we can to be able to address this both for our neighbors around our park district as well as the members of the pickleball community. I'm very amenable, but I will also go back to Scott as to what steps can we possibly take at this point.
Well, I think that a good step would be to explain our position back to the village and raise the issues about the ordinance that they're attempting to enforce, or the ordinances they're attempting to enforce, and to say we want a way forward here, and so we should sit down and discuss this.
Is this something that should be done in an open meeting at their next?
That's probably not going to go so well. So I would think that you'd want to have a small group of people, see if you can discuss it. Otherwise, some people, in all candor, may not speak freely, or in my experience, like joint board meetings aren't usually that productive unless there's a specific thing that you're doing or something that is, we're doing this together here, that could be pretty adversarial in certain situations, and we're trying to avoid that.
I would like to get this resolved as soon as possible. Also, I know we all do.
Right.
And I would also like to spend the least amount of money on attorney's fees, no offense. Right? I mean.
No, I agree with you.
Yes,
I agree with you 100%.
yes.
I hear you. I said earlier, judges typically don't like to see taxing bodies fighting against each other. So
correct.
Yes.
So I would agree a good way forward would be to call and set a meeting with whoever is appropriate to be at that meeting to start the discussion on the way forward. How do we get the pickleball courts open? How do we make this happen?
But if we have an informal discussion, can anything happen to give some relief on this? Or do they then have to go through their formal process of their board to be able to say, okay, we're giving you, temporary replies that you can.
And can you present your interpretation of everything, before we would have this meeting?
So their administrator has a lot of discretion under their ordinance. So I would think that they could come up with, there's solutions to this. There's definitely solutions. Without the board acting, there are solutions.
Yeah, are we okay with anyone talking? Yeah, please.
Dave Anderson, one suggestion and consideration would be, Jennifer, for you to have a call or a meeting with Regis. That's just something I would say, is to just have a one-on-one.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else on this topic?
I think we ought to continue that in executive
We'll
session.
go into executive session so that if there's talk about litigation of any kind, that would have to be put into executive session. Because we really have to talk about, I agree, Ann, and you raised a very good point. First off, what is this doing to us financially? Second, how are we best approaching this? Given what's been happening with the interaction between the village and the park district, we have to tread lightly. We have to make sure that we're very cognizant of if there is anything that happens, making sure that I don't want to go into litigation. I don't think we would find it the best way to do this, but if litigation is brought, what do we need to do as a park district? And that seems...
I would just like to suggest that we make sure we kind of do a deep dive on how we handle this, so that when we can be open and honest about a year's worth of complaints, I mean, who said what, and be willing to, however we have to go forward to make it happen, whether it's reporting that information or, a year's of complaints. That's not in our board minutes, so I'm not sure. And we don't ask that everything come to the board, but,
Right. And let's go back to the collegial tone. Let's go back to how can we sit and break bread and work this out. I'm sorry, we do have one.
Hi, I'm John. I live in Lake Bluff. Just a quick question. So, they're saying that they've been making these complaints over a year. I don't know what's true or not. Clearly it's legal. Clearly it's a noise issue. No sound mitigation has been done up to this point, clearly. Is there any way to approach them and figure out a solution with sound mitigation before, is there any way to have that discussion with them? At this point, or is it just is it too far gone now that it's like we're going to court over zoning issues? Because it sounds like that's where y'all feel. And I have to say, I have to feel a little bit bad for them, because it sounds, I don't know why nothing with sound mitigation has been done to this point.
Thank you.
Keith Manning, resident of the town, and thank you for your service. It's never easy. But this is us, guys. The village is us, you're us. Just talk to Regis and have a conversation. And then the poor neighbor that's on the phone here, certainly we need to address their concerns. But I think that your point about the money and the time and the effort and this gentleman's points that he brought up are all valid, and it's kind of easy stuff. It's really about communication when it gets right down to it. We got a letter that's written kind of poorly, or in my opinion, I'm sorry to the author, and that person's doing their job the best they can do, but if we kind of assume the best intent, and perhaps just move forward with that conversation with Regis, I think we could get a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so it sounds like our next steps then, I am more than willing to do a reach. It's very necessary, and hopefully we can keep things toned down. But again, it sounds like we need to have attorney present, because they more than likely will have their attorney as well. We'll set this up to be able to get that conversation. Thank you, everybody who participated. We are going to go with the rest of the business on the board. I don't know if you want to hang around for all of that, or you're welcome to leave all this
Stick it out so know, if we go into closed session, I don't know the ILCS code. I'm always the one who takes us into executive session. I don't know the code for that one. Yeah, what is the code? Do you want me to look it up?
Do that now.
275?
It's too, I can't remember. Just give me a second, I'll find it.
Okay, thank you. But at this point, you don't, I should just kind of mumble. Yeah. And Marcia has to fill it in. Do we go into executive session now?
No, keep it rolling.
We keep rolling, okay. Next up is our grants and planning.
Yes, we have a fly over here that likes.
Oh, he's been all over the place.
Yeah, it's
Really
going
friendly.
Commissioner to commissioner. Stopped at Scott for a while.
We have a good grade.
So basically, a couple of things that I wanted to touch on with the grants. One, would just make the board aware of a ComEd grant that the Park District's working with ComEd right now on a energy saving grant to help the Park District in converting a lot of light fixtures, light bulbs in some cases, weather stripping, different things that would help to save energy, you know, in the future and save on our bills in a pretty substantial way. And fortunately, ComEd has a grant that's available to do this work. So they've come out with to do an assessment of our facilities, working with NOAA and with MICA, and looking at a lot of our facilities. The work is quoted, it would be about $76,000 worth of work, and the cost to the Park District is less than $10 because it's covered by this grant. So there's
Less than 10.
Less than $10. So like almost half of Noah's lunch, I suppose. You know what I mean? It was like, so a pretty amazing deal. It's hard to say no, and I think it would really be beneficial for the Park District and for our bills in the future to help save money. So we're pretty excited about that. The other one, you know, just as an update, we did have another call with Upland Design, who's assisting us with the OSLAD grant, with a Zoom call last week, where we were able to go through some more information, just talking about the project, potentially the pool renovation project that we would apply for the OSLAD grant for, and just some of the things, design elements, things that might help improve the chances of our grant being approved. And so that's why we have, you know, in this packet tonight, we have a resolution that's needed to be approved in order to apply for the grant. That has to be approved for ahead of time. So that's kind of just where we're at. We'll continue. There's a lot of work to be done, and a public meeting to be scheduled, and as we get input from the residents, from the staff, and from the commissioners. So that's kind of where we are on that. And I just want to open up to see if there's any questions at this point, or unless anyone else has a comment on it.
And that community meeting is 24, so it's next week?
Well, that's a good question, Derek. We have not, things shifted because of this information about, from the village. So we originally talked about the 24th for having a community meeting. Are we in gear up that quickly?
I had sent a message to Upland Design asking if we would be better off to push that into early August, just giving a little bit more time to get some of those ideas together that need to be presented at the meeting, so we're not too rushed on that. And also, you know, we're working with the Ray Lee, the architect from FGM, who was part of the initial, or the 2015 minor renovation and addition of the top pool. And so he's working on some information, but I'm not sure his information. You know, he's updating a lot of those numbers from 2021, actually, was when the cost estimates were put together. So based on our call, he's making, you know, some revisions, but I'm not sure that he'll be ready as well. So it is likely we'll probably have to do it in early August instead.
And then do you want to chime in with our meeting with any of the other thoughts that came through?
Off the top of my head, there were the two goals were the elements and then making sure that the architect had his key points, what he had to do. I think I sent it to everybody.
Because one of the design suggestions that came through was changing, we currently have the ADA compliant bathroom in the guard area. And there was, from Michelle Kelly, the suggestion of this could generate more interest if we redesign or reconfigure how that is to make sure it's even more accessible, so you don't really kind of have to ask permission to use the bathroom in the staff room, but making it so that it's more accessible without having to go through that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because when I was just doing some research, when you guys did the ADA, because it was, what was it before?
It was our office.
So it was a guard office with a sink.
Right.
And to do that bathroom, the cost then, it was $56,000.
Wow.
So to add a whole new bathroom,
Yeah.
which was, a different number that was presented at the meeting for a bathroom.
So the good thing is that it's just making the access to that from the lobby.
More accessible.
So it's accessible to the public. Right now, you have to go find a guard and say, excuse me, can I use the bathroom in the guard room, the ADA? And you should not have to do that. By taking the door off the back of the hallway there behind where the registration check-in is, and maybe putting up a different door, you can have that access where it's open access. It's a hallway, and that's with the signage that's the ADA accessible restroom, and they can, anybody that's used it can use it whenever they need to use it. They don't have to ask for permission to use it. And so that was a kind of a cheaper, kind of creative way to make that more accessible without having to add a lot of money to put in one new ADA restroom on either side, men's or women's, is going to be a lot of money. So this was
that's
kind of
about 10, I think, about 20. Was it 25,000 to do the reconfiguration?
Easily, and to kind of shorthand it, they could do it on the boys' side, they couldn't do it on the girls' side as cheaply. So the boys could get it done. The girls, which immediately she said, no, stay on that one.
I have a question about how we share the payments with the grant. So $600,000 has to be matching grant. We'll end up spending more than $600,000.
Yes.
But if we include the ADA portion in our grant request, does half that money have to come from the OSLAD money? Because the ADA budget, there's a lot of money in the ADA budget.
all of the whole plan, the whole project gets submitted to them. So it's not like earmarked that all of their 600, you have to use 300 just for ADA, the ADA improvements that you're doing. It's just 600 towards the overall project.
So if the ADA portion costs $150,000, we could take that entire portion from our ADA fund.
Correct.
Which is in good shape right now. And get the benefit of including it in the grant proposal to make it sound better.
Well, and it is better. It was a good element point that she brought up.
Right.
We were thinking something like more bedazzled, but it was more of a solution, finding, there was a problem. She noticed it right away in the design, and she's like, what's going on here? And she pointed it out. So.
Yeah, there was even, with this renovation, there's going to be a filter room addition, enlarging that and putting in a new balance pit, et cetera. So there's even some talk, well, within that addition, do we also put in a restroom that's ADA accessible from the pool deck? But that's a lot more money than just reconfiguring the access to the current bathroom and still utilizing that bathroom.
So, anything else on that, or we'll go right into the resolution?
Sure.
Okay. So as we said before, when we apply for the OSLID grant, we have to be prepared as a park district to make sure that our funds are also going to be there to match what OSLID could grant. And so we would have to give a maximum, as we said, our pool repairs, our pool maintenance will exceed the $600,000 that we are asking for. So we have that prepared already, but we have to make sure that we have this resolution as part of the grant process. Anything else I need to throw in there, John, or are we?
That's
everything?
That's everything.
Okay. So obviously with staff recommending that we approve this OSLID resolution of authorization 2023C, which you'll find on pages 38 and 39, which references our ability as a park district. We do have to, OSLID timeframe is 2 years, as specified in the project agreement. We have to submit the building certification statement within 45 days. They talk about the reimbursement time for the OSLID grant. So if I could have a motion, please, then to approve this OSLID resolution of authorization 2023C.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please, Marcia.
Commissioner Greenfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Lane?
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore?
Yes.
Commissioner Reader?
Yes.
Commissioner Welch?
Yes.
Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
President Taylor?
Yes.
Do we need to do anything different since there's like signatures back on the phone? We have to use their time.
There's not signature for all the commissioners, those are just whether they voted yes or no.
I see, okay, they're not always there, so I didn't.
If I do have a resolution, I'll need a signature from President Beeler this year. And then I put on the seal and I.
North Shore Water Reclamation Basin Project update.
We had another meeting, maybe become a little less frequent with basically with the contractor with the village with North Shore Water Reclamation District, which is good, I guess. Both Jim and Noah attended the meeting with me, and Cindy, our communication person for construction. So also representatives from the village and North Shore were there. That was on Friday, or I think Thursday of last week. They continued to dig a deeper hole. I mean, it's not a lot new to talk about. The hole gets deeper. I think that they're communicating pretty well on when there's going to be busier days with trucking, or something that's going to be more disruptive. But people have adapted. Most are listening. Some don't. They'll still walk past staff and walk up and down the road, but most are listening. And I think a lot of I've not received more complaints about vibration. They're done with most of that work, the sheet piling. They've removed the monitoring equipment, the vibration monitoring equipment. They had no readings that would indicate any sort of, even close to any sort of level that would damage the foundations of houses on Sunrise. So that was good. And so what they told us was that they're on schedule, which was good to hear. So I think that's the main thing, that we want to stay on schedule and see this finished with that, substantially completed target date of Memorial Day for 24, and they feel like they are. So I think it was a pretty productive meeting. Jim or Noah, is there anything that I'm missing?
So on Saturdays, hopefully it'll be low with trucks, and we might be able to open up on most of the Saturdays.
As you can see, we do continue to advertise that. If they tell us by sometime on Friday, which it often is, either Thursday or Friday, it's a little bit close, that they're not going to do any work on Saturday, then we'll open the road for that. If they call and say we're leaving at 3 today, we're not changing the hours day to day, and causing probably more confusion than anything. But Saturdays where we can open it, then it's open for the weekend, because Sundays it's open, we do that.
We did talk about opening that road so that people could get their kayaks down, especially I know Tuesday night was a dark meeting, and we all agreed that would be the case, and then that changed. Are trucks going down? Are they still working overtime during the week?
It's open after 7 every night.
Right, but how late are they working? If they're not doing overtime, why do we need to keep it till 7 o'clock?
Because they would not give us they requested to do it until 7, and that was within the village ordinance for construction. And it's kind of gone up and down, but it's just too inconsistent for us to try to say, okay, Thursday we'll close it at 6, and then the next day we'll do 5 because they're going to be over that day, and then now we're like 7 because they're going to be here all day. So it's.
Well, originally we said we would do that so that we could get that road open so that people could get their kayaks down, etc. So
yeah, I think what we said.
We said till 7 now every day.
Yeah, I think we originally said that we would open it in the weeknight evenings and on the weekends, and so we've done that as much as we can.
The sign now permanently says 7 p.m.
Yeah.
You used to change it so you could do it, and then that stopped. And that was that was not the recommendation of the board. So I'm just curious why we went back.
I have to go back and review that. I don't remember that being a recommendation, but I have to review that. It just seemed to be, confusing to change it day by day, and the contractor doesn't always know, because depending on one of their subs that's working that day, and then all of a sudden the sub, which is everyone out there stature right now, will come and say, okay, we're done, and it's 3:30. So we'll review that.
I talked to Cindy too. But she was our communication person.
I think the hard part is because it's to each staff. And so, and Jim has chimed in too, it's making sure through Jim, through Diane, that the staff have the consistent message versus, is there really a chain of command? Because if they're not talking to us and they're not telling Cindy that they're done at 2:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon, and then it has to be relayed to.
I realize there's a communication.
Yeah, there's a communication gap.
It's a lot of communication, and there's so many staff members, that work at the beach. So it's not like the same person you get on Monday that you're going to get on Tuesday. So you don't want to be inconsistent, and that Diane has been a firm believer of that, working with the staff. She says that's been the biggest struggle. Honestly, we really haven't received any complaints since the very beginning of all of this.
Someone might just be doing it, after a certain time if there's no construction. But that was definitely one of the feedback from staff, that inconsistency was difficult. What are they going to listen to? We're changing it, almost daily. So there's no set time. There was, originally some resistance to even doing it Saturdays. They didn't want to open it up this Saturday because they're going to be not doing any construction, because that's not, consistent. We're saying they're closed every Saturday until 6, but we've said, we put back on that and said, no, that's something, but it's a full day. It's a weekend day, we're going to open that up. But the feedback for the weeknights was it's just difficult to enforce and inconsistent.
Well, I guess I'd look to say if somebody could just look and say how many nights do they actually work in past 5, because it doesn't seem like they are at all. So
our worry is, again, and it puts us back in charge of being, I think puts us in a risky position where, we pull the signs and say it's open, and there's, a late truck that comes in, or is leaving at 5:30, and we close that early that day, so now we put people on the roadway in harm's way. So I think from a risk management standpoint, I think it was safer to just be consistent, say 7 is the time.
Anything further? And again, thank you to Jeff, thank you to Cindy, because the communication that's been coming out has been good. There's a lot of social media about it, which is what we ask for here. So thank you to both of you. Lake Bluff Open Lands Association storage amendments on page 40.
Yes, I have a question about the agreement. Paragraph 5 on page 23, 42. It says until June 30, 2023.
Yeah.
That should be,
2024.
yeah, that should be 24. I believe the current agreement goes through 24. And I think it is June 30th of 24. Okay. So we'll change that. If we approve that, we'll put that 24.
I thought I was going to say something stupid.
Do it 1 year until the MOU had
Yeah. So then that was the intent of it, was to then line it up with the MOU and to have the same dates.
So with that amendment, so we do not go back in time. May I have a motion then to approve the storage amendment to the existing memorandum of understanding?
Second.
Marcia, may I please have a roll call?
Commissioner Greenfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Lane? Yes. Commissioner Raymore? Yes. Commissioner Reader?
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh?
Yes.
Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
President Bueller?
Yes. Written communications, community comments, we actually got a handwritten letter.
Yes, this is a former commissioner of the Park District, and Dave Canfield spoke back in April, and Noah was able to secure a replacement bench for that and get it put in, and the plaque transferred to it. So good to get some good feedback once in a while.
It's very kind.
I want to make sure I share it with you.
And we did not get any emails that came in from the portal regarding anything.
No, we had no online comments that we could see.
Okay. Then I shall turn it over to Nikki to take this into executive session as the addition to our agenda.
I'd like to move into executive session under Illinois State Code 2C11 for the purpose of discussing probable or imminent litigation.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Greenfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Lane? Yes. Commissioner Raymore?
Yes.
Commissioner Reader?
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh?
Yes.
Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
President Bueller?
Yes. So we're ending Zoom.